lockdown easing in the UK, I'm on the streets of Hartlepool asking people a very important question. Excuse me, do you mind if I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what time it is?
It's Baggy hi-fi time.
Thank you very much. Greetings cats and kittens, welcome once again to Baggy Hi-Fi, this YouTube channel devoted to record collecting and the vinyl community here in the UK and beyond, of course. So it's good to be back. I haven't made a video in about a week and a half. Of course, since the last video I made, in that week and a half, many more shops have opened. Of course, that includes record shops as the lockdown eases in our country. Not everything's open though. I went shopping on Wednesday hoping to find this antique place open that sells used vinyl, and it was still closed. But this video, short video, I'm going to race through these records, are all records that I've bought since real record shops have been open once again and we haven't had to just rely on buying vinyl online. So these are bought just from two shops. And the first one is from an antique place in Hartlepool, and I bought quite a few there. It's a good place. I've been waiting for this place to open for months now. So the first record I got was this classic from the very late 60s, the Pentangle, Basket of Light on Transatlantic, say from 1969. The Pentangle were a sort of a supergroup, folk jazz supergroup that included Jackie McShee, Bert Jansch, and this is their third album, and I think it's the only vinyl I have by Pentangle, so hoping to get more, but it's a great one, and it includes the well-known Light Flight, which was a theme for a BBC TV series, Take Three Girls. So the next record, still in the 60s but going a little bit further back, is by the Downliner Sect, and it's their first album from 1964. This is a reissue. I think this would have been from the 70s on the Charlie label. Yeah, the Downliner Sect were an R&B, British R&B garage band from the 60s, and they never really achieved great recognition. Billy Childish has championed them in recent years and also has recorded with these musicians who were the main members of the Downliner Sect. But this is really excellent, raw R&B garage, and includes one of my favourite tunes, Little Egypt, which I think was on one of their very first singles. So yeah, so as I say, it's the 70s reissue on but very nice condition on the Charlie label. And there is another Billy Childish connection, the wearing of deer stalkers. Continuing with British 60s bands, this next one is by the Trogs, who had many hits in the 60s. This compilation, this best of collection, is from the 60s, and it's on Page One Records, which were a division of Fontana Records, and it includes most of their famous hits like I Want You, With a Girl Like You, Girl in Black, that's a good one, Wild Thing, of course, I Can't Control Myself, Give It to Me, and the very strange Night of the Long Grass, one of their most psychedelic leaning tunes. But although the Trogs had a real gift for pop melody, their sound was very, very primitive and primeval most of the time, and I think they can be numbered amongst the great garage bands of the 60s. This, like many 60s pressings, sounds really nice and loud and punchy, but there is some damage on side 2 on I Can't Control Myself, because there is what looks like a sort of a melted portion of vinyl on here, which I think is a cigarette burn, but it's a vintage cigarette burn. But nice to have this collection. Most of it does sound great, and nice sleeve to boot as well. So that's Best of the Trogs on Page One Records. And really, you can't have enough Trogs records, can you? And the next one is something you don't see very often, and I was really pleased to find this. And it's an album by the Go-Betweens, because Go-Betweens vinyl is very expensive now. So this one is their album Before Hollywood, and it is their second album from 1983, and the songwriting and singing is shared by Robert Forster and Grant McLennan. You might think of the Go-Betweens, if you know them slightly, as being a sort of a melodic indie band, but they're very unique, I would say. Quirky riffs, unusual time signatures, clear and punchy at the same time. This is very nicely produced. It was recorded in the UK. They're an Australian band. This is probably their masterpiece, really, but this is the only album I have on vinyl by the Go-Betweens, apart from a compilation which I've showed in one of my earlier videos. So very, very pleased to get Before Hollywood by the Go-Betweens. So they were the records I bought from the Antique Centre in Hartlepool. This next batch of albums is from a much more local shop, which I've shown in a previous video, and that's Steel Town Music. It's just in walking distance from where I live, and these are mainly sort of pop orientated purchases. So the first one is the Go-Go's first album, American pop band, and there's some well-known tunes. This is Beauty and the Beat from 1981. It includes We Got the Beat and Our Lips Are Sealed, which was later covered by the Fun Boy 3. They did a nice version, but the original is probably is better. So nice to have this pop album by American band the Go-Go's. And in a similar vein, the Bangles. Seem to be showing a lot of the Bangles recently, but this is a maxi single from 1982, or a mini album. This music really is an early lineup of the Bangles. I remember Annette Zelinskas on bass, who later left, and there are 5 tracks on here, and it's all very much great 60s influenced pop. It's on the IRS label. I think a lot of these songs would have been when the band was still called the Bangs. But if you see this one, I would certainly purchase it if you're a fan of 60s influenced rock and pop music. And the next one, by a much more well-known band, the Kinks. I was quite pleased to find this, but this is one of their 70s albums. This is Everybody's in Showbiz, and it's a double album. This is, I think, their 14th album, the Kinks' 14th album, and I think this one followed on from Muswell Hillbillies. And the style that the Kinks were pursuing at this time was much more American sounding, and they went on to really big success in the States in the 70s. So this is not sort of classic 60s style Kinks with a very English subject matter. In fact, the subject matter isn't really very English. The stuff about touring the USA, but it does feature on the studio album Supersonic Rocket Ship and Celluloid Heroes, which are still, I think, stand up amongst some of Ray Davies's best songs. The second album in this double is a live one recorded at Carnegie Hall. It's quite fun. So not a top-notch Kinks album, but it's nevertheless nice to have. So that's Everybody's in Show Business on RCA. And this last one, I saw Graham from Cracking Vinyl YouTube channel, which I highly recommend, talking about Altered Images recently, and they're another early 80s pop band. This is their first album, Happy Birthday. I wondered what teens who bought this album made of this album, because this came out in 81, and Happy Birthday had been a really big hit. But this is much more of a sort of post-punk album. It's produced by Steve Severin of Susie and the Banshees, and there's also almost a sort of Susie and the Banshees sound to the sort of churning bass and metallic sounding guitar. This is before Altered Images became much better produced and much more sugary in production. I think I like most of Altered Image's output, but this album is still quite a sort of raw post-punk album, and of course it features Claire Grogan. John Peel is thanked because he was a great champion of Altered Images, I remember, back in the 80s. So this one is another nice one to have. Happy birthday by Altered Images. So that's it for this quick video of records that I've bought, not online, but from real record shops, and it has been a pleasure to go in a shop and look through the racks again, once you have sanitized your hands, of course. So long may it continue. Hope you're all keeping safe. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for the subscriptions. We're nearly up to 140 now, which is I'm very grateful for. So until the next time, bye for now.